Thanks for staying with us. You're still watching News Night from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. A reminder of our top stories.
Lawyers in Imo State to boycott courts to protest gruesome murder of Magistrate NBA case, asks police to fish out killers.
Labour Party, People's Democratic Party, ask the Central Bank of Nigeria to introduce urgent measures to ease the pain caused by scarcity of new Naira notes.
6 people have been confirmed dead in Lagos ship accident.
Europe reduces its energy dependency on Moscow, bans Russian diesel, other oil products over Ukraine. While 11 governors elected on the platform of the All Progressives Congress met with President Muhammadu Buhari just on Friday at the State House here in Abuja over the lingering cash crunch in the country. Well, this is as a result of the Naira redesign and demanded for the concurrent use of the new and old notes till the end of this year. However, the president rejected the demand of the governors and urged Nigerians to give him a 7-day grace to resolve the cash crunch.
Now we have joining us Dr. Sam Amadi,
our rights news analyst,
to discuss these and sundry issues with us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we've had back and forth over the new Naira, and Nigerians have been going through all kinds of emotions, up and down, up and down. So where do we go from here?
Well, I think the way to go is to ensure, like, everybody expect that in the weeks to come, when days to come, things will get better. I mean, more cash in the banking system, some of the bottlenecks, allegations of hoarding and all that is cleared. But I think the big question right now is around what does this political, brickbat and political ping pong mean for the credibility of monetary policy, and of course the independence of the central bank.
Now, when you say ping pong, does it bother you that what has been done to the Naira, for whatever political reasons as have been suggested from different quarters, does it bother you that what this is doing to the economy at the moment?
Well, the Naira design was aimed at strengthening the economy, essentially limiting the amount of Naira out of official control, limiting the criminal use of the funds in terms of terrorism.
How is it achieving all this now?
Well, right now, I think the crisis is more than the benefit because of overt politicization, and that's the problem. See, the CBN Act and central banking protocol all over the world is to guarantee independence of the central bank. It has 2 levels, the political and economic independence. The independence to set its goal, monetary goals, make its priority. Also the independence to deliver instruments to achieve that goal. So Central Bank Act has given us, made it clear, price stability, monetary stability, and of course, drive economic growth. Now, the fact that the central bank, people can argue around timing, can argue around the transition period. Even the World Bank in December 2022 argued that they foresee hardship for the rural people, poor people, because of the timing and the short window for transition. But the real problem now is when political parties, governors, for example, like the story said, are now putting pressure on the president to pressure the central bank to deliver an outcome, namely they want a cancellation, they want it to run concurrently. Now, the crisis that it's weakening the independence of the central bank itself is creating a lot of uncertainty, and investors will be thinking, look, if you can manage monetary policy in that overt partisan
especially
manner.
Looking at the political will to either listen or stay strong. Well, Dr. Amadi, at the end of the day, you made a very salient point. You talked about the timing and, the duration. The Central Bank Act is clear. 90 days is what was provided by the Act. But the CBN, at the time it made this announcement, had about 100 days between then and the first, deadline. But at the end of the day, we need to look at the fact that we're seeing pressures from all corners, not just the governors of the APC, but also the National Assembly and even pressure groups all across the country. But at the end of the day, we need to look at this, which you've actually highlighted on, and I want you to expatiate on that. This political pressure actually sort of, some would say, weakens the independence of the CBN. So talk to us about the implication on the monetary policy process and its effect on the Nigerian economy in the long run.
Absolutely. Look, some may argue that maybe the central bank has not been able to protect its independence before now. The use of ways and means to shore up fiscal deficit. Again, the critical issue here is process. The president appoints a central bank, so we know that the central bank all over the world, the British central bank got its own independence after Thatcher. The debate there: should central bank be so independent to drive monetary policy to undermine fiscal policy? But the question for us is, if the president, for example, this design has to be approved by the president, and he approved it. Now, if there is concern and it filters through normal process, people are worried. Commentaries, National Assembly calls the governor explains this. The central bank goes back and rethink the process and make some amendments to respond to those challenges. That will be in keeping with the notion of independence. But when governors or political actors or even the Senate gives a decree and say, look, on so day you have to do this, you are damaging that concept of independence. And that concept is important. It grew out of many years of research showing that the independence of the central bank has impact for inflation rate, shows the stability. If central banks are independent, the likelihood of high inflation is not possible because on average, they don't have incentive to drive up inflation in order to deal with unemployment. So if you expose the central bank to the kind of very obvious partisanship, that you now tell Mr. President, this is what we want, or the Senate says you have to do this on this day, or House of Reps says this is what
there's
we want.
a bench warrant out.
You are
to the
basically
government
undermining the fundamental of macroeconomic policy making. Not just now. So everybody goes home and says, look, the central bank is a yo-yo. I mean, you can toss them around. If you're able to mount street campaign or drive up some public, populism, central bank will cave in. I think that's the dangerous dimension. No doubt that the policy rollout has been less than efficient. No doubt that the Nigerian factor has played in big. Stories around central bank now ordering the DSS to arrest bankers or anybody holding cash. So we didn't plan it well. But even though those errors, the central bank is capable of managing them and maybe providing windows to deal with those constraints. But to now make the governor palpitate around what would the president approve, and then go to the president and say, Mr. President, you have to act this. And then this is the most dangerous one. They're linking it to election. So the idea of independence of monetary policy is that it's delinked from actual politics.
The CBN governor had actually explained in the past. He says, even though the timing is quite curious, we're more focused on
economics of
the economics of it.
And the strategic agenda.
That is not the issue. 80% of Naira was actually not in the banking system. Control. So they needed that to come back to the system. But the timing, we still have to look at it.
The timing might not be opportune in terms of election. But again, we made a heavy word of the timing. By the way, the central bank gave, like I said, over 3 months or thereabout for people to get where we are now. We know that the system don't work. Last minute is part of the game, just like the PPVC collection. The real problem here is, if they had said, look, there's a crisis, how do we deal with it? But to say, oh, this is targeted at disrupting somebody's campaign, that is actually the real thing that monetary policy is against. That's to say, don't yoke it to politics. If you yoke it to politics, then that could mean that a government that is about to exit can take monetary policy that will damage long-term economic stability and give it short-term benefit. Now, they are saying, just give us, let's win election, okay? Remove this thing. I mean, the most errant one was the one that they says, don't keep it open until after election. Then after election, you can now close the window. Now, that's really yoking monetary policy to real politics. And I guess at this point, the central bank is trying to say, look, we're not going to do any of that. And I think what we need next for the central bank to reassert its power
How does this?
By basically, see, the board of governors, the BOG is in charge here. Okay, the monetary policy committee is in place based on the act. Sit back, the governor and the relevant stakeholders in the industry, in the central bank, and say we have assessed this. We are sticking with our cut off debt. These are the mitigating factors to deal with some of this. But we're not going to listen to any political talk, because the moment you do that and extend to, because right now everybody knows it's politics that's driving this. If either produce for or against from the popular side, the central bank made a policy based on strategic cost ratio. They may have got some things wrong and got some things right, but to now use politics to trump that economic thinking is actually the worst crisis we can launch ourselves. So in the future, people sit at, by the way, it came with the rating of our stock.
Moody's, yeah.
5 or 4 banks were also downgraded. So after this crisis and this mess of the currency mess, if you like, it might be that we might actually suffer more downgrade, because not just the macroeconomic downgrade will be like this system is unreliable, it's too politicized. We can't even trust the policies that will inflation, monetary policy, everything.
Far-reaching implications.
Thank you very much.
We need to
Dr.
think about
Amadi.
these policies before we think about implementing. Dr. Sam Amadi, Arise News analyst, really painting a picture, not so pleasant picture, I must add. But we appreciate you for coming.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.